welcome to my first video on brewing and brewing basics. This video is going to cover basic sanitation, equipment, stuff like that that's good to have in doing home brewing. I will probably, actually I am going to call this series Backyard Brewing. I'm stealing it from the Huntsville Backyard Brewers Club, which I frequent their meetings. They have a good Facebook page if you want to check it out. I'll have a link in the description. But what we're going to talk about mainly is equipment, supplies, sanitation. Sanitation and documentation is something that is most important two things to do in home brewing. Over here I have this is my yeast profiles. I've got about 20-25 yeasts that I use all the time in making mead and beer and things of that nature. And this here is something I downloaded and printed out. It's Wine Style and Profiles. It's by a Ben Rotter, R-O-T-T-E-R. This is his work, not mine. It is very good work. It is very well done, very thought out, very researched. I printed it out, and a lot of his stuff in here adapts well for making meads. And also they're really good fundamentals for if you're just going to make a straight wine. But there's some very good ideas, some very good documentation, and that I will also have a link to that in the description, which there will probably be a lot of links in the description. Now, moving on to some of the supplies. One of my major supplies, two of my supplies that I buy are, this is One Step, and this is Star San. These are sanitizing and cleaning agents. The Star San is a very mild acid and cleans the sanitation, sanitizes very well. I use it after I've finished using a fermenter, and I clean out all the stuff settled at the bottom. I use the Star San, clean it out really well, scrub it, and let it go. The One Step I usually use before I start a must or a wort. I will fill up my fermenter, add the appropriate amount of One Step, which is about one tablespoon per gallon. So in a 6.5 gallon fermenter, I would use 6.5 tablespoons. Star San is 1 ounce per 5 gallons. And when you're using a 6.5 gallon fermenter, you go ahead and you fill the 5 gallons, you add your Star San, and you take a carboy brush or something of that nature, and you scrub it and you let it set, and you go from there. Something else I do with the One Step and the Star San. When I'm putting together a must or a yeast, I will put my stoppers, my airlocks and stuff, and let it soak while I'm getting everything together, while I'm adding my fruit or my honey or my water or whatever, and let it sanitize while I'm getting that done. So yes, the One Step, there are many different, you don't have to use One Step. You can go to many different brewery or home brewing supply sites. They have different ones. I prefer it because it's cheap. It fits my budget. Star San, same thing. There are there's other cleaners, other sanitizers. You don't have to use these. These are what I use because that's what I can afford, and I haven't had any problems with them. Now moving on to fermenters. I prefer a wide mouth fermenter as opposed to a narrow mouth fermenter. I use this one mainly for aging. After I've brewed, went through my primary and my secondary, I'll put my finished product in here and let it age. It's just easier when you're transferring, when you're racking, to go use the big mouth. This big mouth here has a siphonless nozzle. I love that. It makes racking so much easier. It makes it real easy. As you can tell, these have been cleaned and sanitized. Getting back to that for a minute. One thing I always do is after I clean it out real good with the Star Sand, is I'll stretch cellophane over the top of it and make sure it's on tight. That keeps dust and other contaminants from settling in it while I'm not using it. Other supplies you're going to need is a hydrometer. The hydrometer, I have, this is your hydrometer tube. This is what you put your wort in or your must in to get your starting gravity or original gravity, depending on what semantic or what terms you want to use. Hydrometer is basically this here that tells you how dense the water is, the gravity of the water. This one is a tri-scale, 3-scale hydrometer. It also has conversion for if you're doing wine or mead, for calculating your Brix content and many other things. Very useful. Actually, it's almost if you're calculating potential alcohol, this is a must-have. If you're just making stuff because you like to make stuff and drink it and you're not trying to figure out the details, you don't have to have a hydrometer. I recommend it. I strongly recommend it. It's just the way I was brought up. When I was shown brewing years ago, a hydrometer was something that was basically, you use a hydrometer. So I do. Another thing is I use the Earl Meyer flask. I do my yeast starter if I'm using a wet yeast in it, and I do my rehydration of dry yeast in this. It works really well. It has a foam cork, so when you're starting your yeast, or if you're doing a rehydration, you take this, you run it through your Star Sand or your one-step solution, you squeeze it out, you do it kind of like a sponge, because that's basically what this is you squeeze that through. The foam material allows it to breathe, allows carbon dioxide to escape, while at the same time keeping contaminants in. Another thing is I use a stir plate. When I'm doing yeast starters, a stir plate is crucial. This here is just a simple $16 off Amazon chemistry stir plate. It is what you need, or I shouldn't say what you need. You can go bigger and badder depending on how much money you want to spend. This is really works really well. What I'm currently waiting on to come in the mail is a big industrial stir plate for mixing my worts and my musts while I'm adding stuff into them. I haven't received that yet. It's in the mail with the check, but it's coming. Those can do up to about 5 gallons, so it works. Another thing you need when you get a stir plate, you need a mixing bar, a magnetic mixing bar. I prefer the Cross. I just like the Vortex better. If they're all about the same. I store it inside my Earl Meyer flask so I don't lose it. Where's my phone? And I put it in a Earl Meyer flask on top of my stir plate so everything's together. And I put it here. Fairly self-explanatory. Other things. We will look at corks and an airlock. This is a simple airlock. This is an inexpensive airlock. It's a good airlock. It has a cap that goes on it. After you've pitched your yeast, you drop this in here, you put it in the cork, and you put it in the top of your fermenter. If it was on this fermenter, it would just simply go in the top like that, and you would have it. I keep them, I store them in these original plastic bags that they come in. It's just so I don't lose pieces. I sanitize before and after using them. It works. Another thing, your wide mouth fermenter. You have a lid, you have a wide mouth lid, because let's face it, that cork isn't going to fit and cover that hole. So this is your lid for your big mouth fermenter. As you can see, it has a hole for the cork. Another style of airlock I use is a 3-piece airlock. And basically it works just like the other one. You have your cork, you would put a little bit of water or solution in here. Then you put this over it, and you put this on. Then you take it and you put it inside your cork, or you put it in the hole in the cork. And well, this one is not wanting to play right today. There we go. It goes in, and you basically get it like this. Then this would be in the top of your fermenter here, like that. And all you would do is stick it in like that. Real simple. It works really well. Like everything else, I keep this in the Ziploc, just so I don't lose pieces. Oh, this is the bag for my big mouth lid. Put everything in the right bag. Find it easier that way. So I'm going to put this back in here. I would normally have 2 of these big fermenters out here, but I currently have a batch of honey mead wine started and going. So honey strawberry mead. Mead by default is honey. So yeah, I misspoke a little bit ago. So we'll put this back in here, and we'll zip our Ziploc set. These here are bottles. What I'll do, these bottles here will fit your standard sprayer. Usually what I do is I'll fill this up with solution, usually 1 step, or actually I'll usually do 1 bottle of 1 step and 1 bottle of the Star San. And like my paddles and my stir spoons, I'll spritz them. I'll keep them in a container so they stay sanitized, but I'll take them out, I'll spritz them, or if I spritz my yeast packet before I open it so I don't get any infection that may have got onto the yeast packet in storage or what have you. These work really well. This big white box is just simply wine bottles. Wine bottles you use for bottling wine or mead. You can bottle beer in something that big. I wouldn't recommend it, but you can. This is my rack for holding when I'm using my hydrometer. I'll store it in this. It just keeps it out of the way. It's just real easy to have. Moving over to here. This is your standard stir spoon. When you're stirring your must and your yeast and your sugars and what have you into your must or your wort, this is a good thing to have. I do have a paddle. It's misplaced right now. I think I used it for something completely non-brewing and haven't brought it back up to the shed yet. Racking cane. Get this off here without destroying everything. This is a racking cane. Racking cane is if when I'm transferring from this bottle into bottles when I'm bottling, this is one way to do it. Or if I'm brewing, say I'm brewing in a fermenter that doesn't have a siphonless spout on it, you would use a racking cane. You'd have one up high, you'd run tubing, and it would come out, take the cap off, racking cane. I have it as an emergency backup protocol in the event that I need it. Moving on from there, simple dollar store measuring thingies or spoons. They work real well. Measuring cup, which I don't have out here yet, works too, but this saves on guesstimating a teaspoon or a tablespoon or whatever. Like I said, you can pick them up at the dollar store all day long. Racking cane or bottling cane. This is a bottling cane. Take it out of its package. Bottling cane. You took your tubing to the end. Back out here. This is a thing. You took your tubing to the end. Put it in your bottle. There's a little plunger here. Push the plunger down in the bottom of the bottle, and it would fill. And when you let off, this head's designed so when you come out, it leaves you with the proper amount of headspace. Put this in here. You back up on the pegboard. Maybe. Maybe you won't. Moving on. Oxidation rod. This here is right before you pitch your yeast. You'd use this. It has a universal, hooks to most oxygen tanks. You have a rod and there's a stone, pretty much like you find on an aerator for a fish tank. You don't want to touch it with your hands because your oils and stuff will mess the stone up. That is why when I store it, I keep it in a Ziploc bag to help protect the stone. I push it all the way down and I seal my Ziploc bag. This helps protect the stone. This here. Here is a tube I use for transferring water. A lot of times I'm inside my house when I'm starting a musk or a wort. And basically this fits over the end of the sink, and I'll drop this in my fermenter and run water in. Then I'll mix in my sanitizer or whatever and clean it real good. This just saves time. This is an old CPAP machine hose, and it works wonders. It's great for just transferring large volumes of water for cleaning. And finally, medical tubing. Yay, medical tubing. This is what I use on my racking cane and my bottling cane. It goes perfectly. Now, get back to the oxygen. Oop, that doesn't go there. Go up here again. Get back to the oxygen. Bottled oxygen. You can get this at hardware store, Tractor Supply, Home Depot, Lowe's, Ace Hardware. Any of those places will carry this or its competitor. They run about $10 a bottle, and you get a fair amount of uses. I usually do about a 30-second oxidation of my wort or my must before I pitch my yeast, and it works really well. It allows my yeast oxygen to breathe and what have you. So this is basically, okay, this is a wine bottle rack. This comes apart, maybe. Hopefully we can get it, there we go. No, there we go. You put your wine bottles in it, upside down. The liquid drains out when you've cleaned and sanitized them. It even comes with a catch tray, which had like stuff in it. So yeah, this is your basic, very basic supplies. Don't need all of them. Well, you do. Some of them you have to have. Some of them are niceties. They're all good to have. As I do more brewing videos, we'll get more into recipes and we'll get into other materials such as yeast energizers and yeast nutrients, yeast itself, doing a yeast starter versus rehydrating yeast and those things. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Looking forward to making more. Peace and enjoy life.